right. Hey, good morning, everyone. Just want to be sure y'all can hear me okay. And welcome to Holy Talk this morning. All right. I see you can hear me. Uh, Welcome to Holy Talk this morning. Today is February the 3rd. Uh, the I think that the uh, groundhog saw his shadow, was scared, and that there's going to be a longer winter. Lucky for us here in Mississippi, it's been a pretty mild winter, although I'm saying that. And I asked Siri this morning what the temperature was here in Ridgeland, Mississippi, and it was 27 degrees. I know that anyone joining us from up there in the north is like, it's not much to complain about given all the snow that I've seen in the news. And so, yeah, I'm happy with the mild winter and hope that it continues. And yeah, we're talking Holy Talk this morning. And so this morning, I want to start us off as we have in the past with a prayer. And the prayer is one that's close to my heart, one of my favorite prayers in the prayer book. It's called a collect for the human family. So if you're joining us now, we're going to begin in prayer, and there in the comment thread is the place for us to discuss together the issue at hand. But before we do that, let's center ourselves in God's presence and in God's mission. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. O God, you made us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion upon the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love. And work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Work through our struggle and confusion. Work through our struggle and confusion indeed. Yeah, so the topic that I want to take on today, and I hope that you can join with me in, is, just this light topic here, immigration. Of course, that immigration policy is currently in the news because the Biden administration is working toward immigration reform. And so for us, it brings up all of that debate that has been going on for really all of human history. And so when we talk about immigration, immediately there are feelings that happen, and a wide range of feelings that happen and responses to that. There are people, of course, who have immigrated themselves, whose families have immigrated. There are people who resist, right, or want to be extra careful when it comes to immigration policy. And so in America, as in many things, we find ourselves divided on this issue, and we find ourselves in the midst of a heated debate that happens politically, socially, on kind of all fronts of our common life together. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about, kind of set the stage for immigration and kind of the concerns and all the things that go into just framing a conversation about immigration, and then get into the place that I can actually speak to a little bit more, which is the Christian responses to immigration, the reality of immigration and the needs that come because there are many, many migrants in the world. And so I'm gonna check over here. I see I got a few of y'all with me. Good morning, Kay. Good morning, Vicky. Good morning, John. Glad to have y'all with us. I want to just get started on the topic and remind us of the respectful guidelines for dialogue. And I know everybody here, we're not going to have an issue with this. And, we're generally open to respectful dialogue in the church, and we need to invite more and more of it in the community. So basically, this is respectful guidelines for dialogue. I won't go into all of them, but what I take away mostly is empathetic listening, And what that means is trying to come from a place where we understand the feelings of those that are speaking. And so if we're talking about immigration, that can bring up fears, concerns, it can bring up hopes, desires. And as we listen to those, the opinions of other people, and hopefully we'll get to some of those today. If you're uh, willing to share with us, if we get to those, then we can listen to each other and read the comments from each other and know that it's coming from a human place, a place of human emotion, and we can respond in a kind and empathetic way. And so, just to frame the discussion and have some guidelines, remember that we're doing this in a Christian context, and that we are all God's people made in God's image. So I want to frame the discussion a little bit further on immigration and say this. If you turn on the TV and if you listen to the news, you will see, and you listen to the politicians speak, you will see a discussion that is framed on the extremes, right? One side wants to have completely open borders with lawlessness, right? That's what you'll hear from the politicians. And on the other side, all they want to do is shut everybody out on, racial or ethnic or any other kind of inhumane terms. And so the debate gets framed, the discussion gets framed on those extremes. And we put a big old category and of people together, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, whatever that label is, and we put their position in the extreme, and we say that's the discussion. That's where it should happen. And in reality, all of us are somewhere there in the middle, which is what Episcopalians believe, working toward the middle way. But of course, when you get somebody on the TV and when you interview someone, it's better for the news, it's better for the ratings, it's better for entertainment value to talk on the extremes, right? And to find those people with extreme points of view. But if you look at the surveys, most of what they suggest is that on things like immigration policy, what people want is to both give those people in need a chance, right? And then also to remain safe. We all want similarly, mostly the same things. We want to be safe. We want for our families to be safe. And we want for those in need, we want them to be able to have opportunities and be afforded that same safety, security, and opportunity that we have. And so the debate comes in, the extremes, but we're all somewhere in the middle, I believe. And that's the place that we can do that work. And part of it is going to be rejecting that extreme framing of the discussion, or at least leaving it to the politicians or leaving it to the news media. So that's what I've got to say about that. This discussion is happening in the middle with people from both sides, right, who have legitimate concerns and legitimate hopes. All right, and my work today and some of the things that I'm coming from, the place that I'm coming from is from Sam Wells. This book, How Then Shall We Live? Christian Engagement with Contemporary Issues. Sam Wells is a Christian ethicist and Anglican priest. He's over in England now. He was formerly at Duke Divinity School, studying alongside Stanley Hauerwas, who is a big name in Christian ethics. And I really enjoy his work. I appreciate his perspective, and I think that he lays out a broad perspective on this particular issue in this book, chapter 2 in this book on migration. So what I want to present is partly from this book. I want to just go through a couple of things with you, and then I want to open it up in case there are any comments that are happening in the comment thread right now, and then we can have a discussion toward the end of this, and I'll look through that thread. But as things come up, if there's a comment you want to make, please do so. All right, so the first thing that I want to get in here is some terminology that I think we don't really, when we talk about immigrants, when we talk about those who are on the move, we tend to want to stereotype, categorize, whether that be that everybody is in the same position. Everybody's good people looking for new opportunities or fleeing persecution, or everybody's a bad egg in the middle of that, a terrorist that's coming in to threaten our way of life. We tend to again go to those extremes, and then that gets characterized in how we view that immigrant population. So I think this terminology is helpful for us to make some distinctions. Those distinctions aren't always hard lined, or they aren't always easy to see, and the lines get blurred. But I think that this is a helpful way to frame it. And the first is to talk about asylum seekers. So asylum seekers are those, I believe in United States immigration policy, you've got to prove that you've been persecuted by the government in some kind of way. Basically, those who are persecuted and on the move because their lives are in danger, or they're just completely in desperation because of government policy in their home nation. And so asylum seekers are seeking asylum. So they've got a current application in. They've made it to, let's say, the United States border, and they've talked with an immigration official, and they've petitioned, or they've made an application. So they've got a process going on. And generally, my understanding is that those folks can be allowed in to seek asylum, allowed into the country, go through the process. Now, if somebody that is more up to date on what happens in the actual logistics of this can comment on that. But my understanding is, if you are in a process, you can be allowed into the country. So the asylum seekers are those who are fleeing persecution, who are in a current application process. And then you've got refugees who have made it through that process and have been granted asylum, and so therefore have legal entry into, we're obviously using the United States here, but into any nation. Refugees have gone through the asylum process and have been granted asylum and become refugees. And then there are those that have been forced out of their country, let's say, because of their ethnicity, race, whatever the reason for the country forcing a group of people out. And they are not in any kind of application process. They're called displaced people. And so these are the folks, and this might even include, illegal immigrants, or undocumented people that are displaced, and they're not in any kind of current process for citizenship or for legal status in the country. And so they're displaced. And then there are failed asylum seekers also that you can consider displaced. Those that have gone through the application process and have been denied asylum. And then you just have economic migrants. And these are the folks that, are looking for a better place, a place to have more economic opportunity. And you'll think of this country in particular has a long history of being the land of opportunity, right? I'm thinking, in my mind, I go to an animated cartoon, Fievel Goes West, right? It was one of my favorite cartoons growing up, and probably influences the way that I view immigrants and migrants. And so, but it's the idea of looking for that place, that land of opportunity, of more opportunity. And so, obviously, a super legitimate reason to move, and all of these are legitimate reasons to move. So reasons for migrating. One of them, of course, is war, to flee the violence of war, the violence of persecution, based for religious, social, whatever the reasons are, to move out of that situation, the immediate danger of that situation. Another reason might be for economic reasons. If there's no opportunity, and if you're in economic desperation, to leave the country for that reason, so poverty, or just simply, as we talked about a second ago, economic opportunity. Now, along the way, the important thing is to remember individual context, and that everybody's got a story, and everybody has some reason that they have been they've been compelled to move. Some of those, right, are legitimate reasons, you know, and then some of them may not be. And defining a process. I mean, the whole part of this is getting a process that is able to determine the legitimate needs and what qualifies as legitimate needs. I mean, that's the whole heart of this. But these reasons are generally for because of war, because of poverty, or economic opportunity. And then you got to think about our legitimate reasons for concern. The host nation, as people come in, we've got legitimate reasons to think about and consider migrants coming into the country. And the first one is the economy, right? And the fact that there is a limit to the number of jobs. There's a limit to the economic opportunity that happens within a country, even in the United States. And so it becomes, those tensions, as Sam Wells points out, are already there within our own society about who can actually get to the top of the economic ladder in our country. And then if you introduce new folks into that equation, it's easy for us to scapegoat them, or for us to characterize them as those that can come in and take the jobs, and sometimes it happens, right? And so that the economic tension there is a reason for concern. Another reason for concern is cultural tension, and the idea that if we assimilate folks of other culture, then we might lose our cultural identity and who we are. Of course, that can go to extreme places, and the extent to which our culture naturally also just changes over time, and as people within our own society assimilate together, hopefully integrate together. The culture is naturally changing, but there's a tension of the loss of cultural identity, and so that brings reasons for concern. And then the final one, of course, is just safety, right? Wanting to keep, as we've said, our families, our friends, our neighbors safe, our neighborhoods safe, and of course, when we bring in new people, they can be characterized, unfairly at times, as those who wish to do us harm. There can also be legitimately people who do wish to do us harm. We know that within this vast network globally of the migrant community, there's human trafficking that's happening. There's all kinds of bad stuff that's happening in it. So it's a legitimate reason for concern for our safety. All right. So let's talk about Christian responses to this. And I would say, that one Christian response, from some of our brothers and sisters in the Christian community, is the preservation of a Christian cultural identity, and the preservation of Christian family values, right? And so one of the places that cultural tension exists is, if we let folks from another culture in, it will change, our family values. It will change our cultural way of being. And so that's a Christian response to the issue, is that we don't want to lose those things. Again, it's legitimate to see why that would be a fear. So some Christian responses to the issue of, if we assimilate, it needs to be our culture which is taught to the folks that let in. Of course, that can be at the risk of diminishing or losing altogether the culture of the migrant that comes in. And I believe that maybe a more healthy way is to see that we have a lot to teach each other, and for there to be learning opportunities between cultures. And like I said, the culture is going to change already. And so allowing for our culture to evolve, not to lose its identity, but to evolve, is my own personal point of view. And then I want to read you a couple of things from Sam Wells that he says here that I think are super helpful in ways to think about this. when it comes to a Christian response to migration. I think that the first thing to say and the place to begin for Sam Wells is that we've got to alter the perception that being a migrant is somehow unusual or unnatural. That idea that the migrant is an other, a person that is, a foreigner or somebody that is kind of outside of my human sphere. We've got to get rid of that idea. And Wells makes the point that without migration, the Bible itself, the story could not have been told. The first migration that happens, of course, Adam and Eve are displaced from their home. Then you think of Father Abraham, who was told, get up from your home and go to that land that I'm preparing for you. Of course, you think about those who were in slavery, the Israelites in slavery in Egypt, spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness before they came back to their land. Later, they are exiled by the Babylonian Empire. They lose their temple, and then they come back, right? You think of Jesus in his life, who was driven out of his home because of Herod. And Wells points out that Jesus is a displaced person in that sense. He's also one from heaven that sojourns on earth, travels to earth. He spends his ministry on the move. And when he gets to his home in Nazareth, he's not really welcomed, and he keeps on moving. So he's more of an itinerant preacher. The Bible is full of examples of people on the move, people on the journey to the next place, and trying to find that home. And then the place that Sam Wells lands this is that as Christians, we're all on a spiritual journey. We are all spiritually migrating from this earth to our heavenly home. And so there's plenty of opportunities, even in our own spiritual life, to find that empathy, even if we have not been displaced for any of those reasons ourselves, and it's hard for us to identify. But in a spiritual way, we can empathize. And so obviously you can see the place that Sam Wells is going with all this is that Christians need to embrace that that migration of the soul, but also that just fundamental kind of relationship and commitment to those who are displaced, those who are on the move. And I think this is a sentence for me that really brought it home. Migrants are not fundamentally a threat and danger. They are first and foremost a challenge to the church to re-inhabit its true identity, and a gift to the nation to rediscover its lost energy. Now, on that first point, the church to re-inhabit its true identity, to embrace that, the church has been on the move. The Holy Spirit has been on the move. God's people have been on the move, and to embrace that part of our identity. And from there, that being the place that we give a Christian response, a response of outreach, a response of trying to help those who are on the move. So, and then this point, I think is super important. It says this: the difficult thing to say is that churches seem no closer than anyone else to being able to articulate a humane and sustainable immigration policy of which the church can be proud. In the absence of that, church initiatives are like absorbing episodes in a drama with no overall narrative. Now, I think that that's the challenge part. And what he means, I believe, by that is that saying, we have these let's say, outreach campaigns that grow up, and we say, hey, we know that we've got a large immigrant population that's in our community. Let's do a food drive. Let's do some kind of drive to get to their needs, and let's help them out, and let's support them, and maybe even partner with them and do that. And these are all, like he says, absorbing episodes. These are all important efforts of relief, and they meet a true need. But there's no overall narrative to help these people out long term, or to change the policy and the way, especially that we do this, and we try to work out of this situation to where that need is gone. And so there's no overall narrative, like he says. And so in some ways, it's like just putting a Band-Aid over the wound. And I think that's hard to hear, but that's the challenge, and that's the opportunity. And so how do Christians unite together to say something important to our society about the way that we should treat migrant communities? That's the real question. And I want to come over here to I see there's some comments. I want to get to them in just a second. I'm going to come over here to this just to show y'all a little bit of what the Episcopal Church is doing and active efforts in the Episcopal Church. And let me make sure I can get that up for you. So here's a website at the episcopalchurch.org. This is the Office Government Relations for Migration, Refugees, Immigration. And if you see this, there's this button here, and I know it's small on your screen, but Episcopal Migration Ministries. And it's an important place to start to say, what is the Episcopal Church doing? And it's not only in, those outreach efforts, again, of, meeting a need, but also in kind of policy. And it says the Episcopal Church seeks to address issues of global migration and its root cause as the number of displaced people surpasses 70 million worldwide. We work to protect the human rights and safety of refugees by supporting the refugee resettlement work of Episcopal Migration Ministries. Further, we are committed to advocating for humane immigration policies that respect the dignity and worth of every human being, and for comprehensive immigration reform. So this is a place, and you can go to this and you can see all of this information here, and there's updated stuff on COVID-19, of course, because we're all dealing with that. But I just wanted to offer this resource as some ways that as a church we can partner with the larger church in doing some of this work at a larger scale. It is happening, but again, it's that transition that Wells talks about into more than just absorbing episodes, but changing the system and changing all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, I'm hiding behind my box here. Probably been doing that a lot. Let's see. I'm going to go to the comment thread here, and let's see if we've got some holy talk going on over here. Okay, Michelle, I see you're on. Thanks. June's watching. Yeah, so I do want to open it up a little for those who are with us today, and yeah, you can see two of me there. That's not very helpful. So let's just talk about a Christian response to the issue, and if you've got any thoughts and opinions about how we as a church can do more. And I'm specifically thinking about that gap between finding the immediate need and then addressing the long-term needs. That's kind of what I'm interested in. All right, well, you know what I'm going to have to do? I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to need to get Jim Woodrick on here and get a couple of y'all from church on a Zoom with me, so that I can I'm not going to respectfully force anybody into talking, but so we can get some more dialogue going on. I do think it's good, to present this information. But what I'm really interested in this class, and I'm really interested in for Christians in general, and to open up to the broader community, are ways to talk about this, especially ways that avoid that extreme, and for us to see the legitimate need out there of God's people, and then for us to express our legitimate concerns without it devolving into shouting matches or just going back to the same kind of battle lines. And I guess one of the questions that I think, maybe we can all agree that we need a change in immigration policy. You know, of course, we're going to have a debate about how that takes shape, and it gets into places that a lot of us don't know. When it comes to the legal mumbo jumbo and all that kind of stuff. But um, for me, you know, if there is opportunity for economic opportunity, if there is a safe place that we've got, it seems to me like we've got a lot of space here in the United States. If there is space in the economy to bring in new workers, skilled workers, if we have room, which I believe we do, um, then we should be open to receiving, especially those who have a desperate need. And so there, I've said something that takes a position, but of course, we need a legal process that is not too lengthy, but also one that is, has sufficient vetting to keep us safe. That's all very difficult, to work out, I know, but it seems like those can be the qualities that we have. Kathy does a good job of bringing the short-term needs to us. All right, I'm seeing y'all now. Cool. All right, so Kathy does a good job of bringing the short-term need to us. So Kathy, for those watching who may not know, Kathy is our deacon here at our church, and of course the ministry of the diaconate is to keep the church focused on the needs that are out there in the world, which Kathy does a great job. And she's especially got some good contacts there in Canton, at Sacred Heart Canton. I know they do a lot to serve the needs of those in need, those I'd say migrants, and those who have established themselves in our communities. Yeah, this is a hard format to have a real discussion. I think I'm learning that as I go. But I think one of the things is that people will come to Facebook, and I think that maybe we can transition to Zoom, and I can invite some of y'all to Zoom, and then we can have a little bit more of a discussion, and then also put it on Facebook or not. But I think one of the things that I'd like to do is to invite the community in. So that's the benefit of the Facebook part. But yeah, it's not ideal to have to just put comments in the thread. All right, Jim says, I think the response from the church shouldn't be targeted toward a specific policy, but toward treating all people humanely. Yeah, I mean, I can see that too. I guess that what I would wonder is, is there a way to do that, to treat all people humanely without some kind of policy? We have a covenant, right? We have a baptismal covenant. And the covenant calls upon us to respect the dignity of all people and seek and serve Christ in all persons. That's a good place to, and that's something that we agree to in the gathered community and we pledge ourselves to. And, I just think that where is the place where the rubber meets the road? If I see, and Jim, you would never do this, but if I saw you out there in the community and I saw you mistreating others because of their status, right? Should I come to you? Do I have some kind of religious obligation or moral obligation to come to you and say, hey, Jim, we said the baptismal covenant together, and you agreed to seek and serve Christ in all persons, And it doesn't look like to me like you're doing that. I mean, maybe that's the place where the rubber meets the road. Actual like mutual accountability within the Christian community to the things that we've agreed to doing. Maybe it is. I know that in the real world, probably if that happened between Christian and Christian, it would have the potential to blow up, and would have the potential to be a place where only if they were Norwegians. Nice. Well, it would have the potential to blow up, right? And it would have the potential to say, all right, well, if we can't resolve this, then I'm done with this church. I mean, so that becomes another question. How do we foster an actual Christian community that has mutual accountability, that can be withstood and tolerated and worked through? Um, Big question. Um, so yeah, but so I know that there's tension around when religion gets into the form of policy, and actual government policy. But then again, I mean, if there is a systemic issue, if there is, uh, if there are things systemically that need to be addressed, um, and ways that the government goes through the process that are inhumane or that call for a change. I mean, obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is the family separation policy, right? Shouldn't the church, go against that specific policy if it determines that doing so is inhumane and against God's will? Shouldn't it? Should it be individual members of the church that do that, or should it be a statement from the church at large? I mean, these are all difficult things to say, but I think that to say that the church should not say anything ever about policies, um, is dangerous. So yeah, the other part that I don't know is when Jim says I think so, I don't know what you think so about, because I've moved in several different directions in the past 5 minutes. Um, but yeah, there's a lot to be worked out, and obviously there is a spectrum of opinion and deeply felt beliefs on this subject. And what I'm hoping that we can do more and more, and maybe what this will serve to do, even if this is not the best format for discussion, I'm hoping that it will open up a conversation, a reasonable conversation, as we are a church committed to reason, um, about what we can actually do as Christians in response to the need uh, that's really there, and will continue to be there. 70 million people moving globally. Um, and how we can address the need both uh, on a local scale, and how we can be a part of efforts on a larger scale. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. We're 40 minutes in. I think we've got the point across. I will look to this chat thread to see if there are other things that have been left along the way, as others of you who are not able to join us live maybe see us later. And I appreciate your time and your uh, attention to this issue. And it's a difficult one, and it's one that I do agree with Sam Wells, one that is about the heart and identity of who we are spiritually and who we are as Judeo-Christian people. It's such a significant part of our story that it's a core issue for us. And so, yeah, love y'all. Let's keep the conversation going. Maybe I'll see y'all at church. We can talk about it more. Maybe I'll see you at coffee sometime. Oh, I've got something fun I think I'm going to announce with that, so stay tuned for that. And then love y'all, and hope you have a great day, and I hope you stay safe and healthy and happy out there. All right, peace to everybody. Let's see. There we go. Jim, I think that the church should speak on something. Seems inhumane. Okay, right. So there are places. Yeah, these feeble efforts for me to try to, impact in some way these things that are so big. I appreciate that, Vicky, very much. And peace to y'all. Love y'all, and see you next time.